Alright, this is the WaveRelay training to set up WaveRelay for y'all's network. The first thing we need to do is you have these WaveRelays in front of you. Plug in those cables, plug in the batteries, and turn them on. Once you have they're turned on, you'll see that green light turn on. You need to plug that Ethernet cable into a computer. I'm using a Mac, you can use Windows, you can do whatever you want. But you need to edit your IP address of your computer. You need to make your IP address of the computer 10.3.1.11. Subnet mask is 255.255.255.0. No gateway or what is called a router on here, none of that. So that's going to allow us, you set that, apply it, that's going to allow us to get into the WaveRelay. So the WaveRelays have a management IP address of 10.3.1.254. I'm going to go ahead and log out so I can show you what it looks like. When you go to 10.3.1.254, you'll be prompted with this password, management password. Password is password. Authenticate. Alright, there's a bunch of settings in here. It's not as daunting as it looks. Node status is just the status of the node. It will give you the unit information, the signal noise ratio of the neighbors, GPS status, just status. You don't need to worry about that right now. Node configuration is what we need to do to initialize these and set these up. So click node configuration, then node configuration again. You'll see this hide advanced fields. You want show advanced fields. We need advanced fields. So the way I set up these radios, I just name them node 1 through 50. So this radio happens to be node 3, which node 3. So for node 3, I give it the IP address 10.0.0.3. The net mask is always going to be 255.0.0.0 for each radio we do. The gateway doesn't really matter, but you have to have something in there, so I just set it to 10.10.10.10. VLAN ID, leave that. That doesn't really matter. These radios are mesh networking, so we need to make sure that's enabled and everything. Root gateway priority means if you have a node hooked up to a wired piece of network, you are now a root gateway into that wired network. We actually are not doing that, so this is set on default low, and you want that all the time. What network default low means and low means is network is a global setting for each global setting for the network. If I were to select this one, it just means I set it manually. This one means the whole network by default is set to low, so it doesn't really matter which one you pick. DHCP server filter, it's not really important. I'm not going to explain it. Snap OIU, doesn't matter what that is, just leave it checked as default. Now these radios are called the MPU4, Mike Papa Uniform 4, and each one has one radio in it. So radio 1, they make models that have like 4 radios in it, so it'll say radio 1, 2, 3, and 4. These only have one radio in it. The radio is enabled. We do want that. We can call the radio radio 1, that's fine. So channel, you'll see these have a pretty broad frequency range from 2.3 gigahertz all the way to 2.5 gigahertz. Since we're using these as Wi-Fi hotspots also, you have to pick one of these Wi-Fi channels. Either pick channel 1, channel 6, or channel 11. That'll give you the least interference. For Wi-Fi always runs in the 20 megahertz channel, so select 20 megahertz. Link distance. Link distance is it's just the timing of the packets depending on how far your links are. If you have a 30-mile link, you need to retime the packets, and this does that for you automatically, but we're never going to go that far. So a half a mile should be plenty. It'll go over a half a mile, even if it's set to this, but it's optimized for half mile. So just select half mile, and you have to do this exactly the same way on each radio for them all to be in the same network. Transmit power, this is decibels. It's 2 watts, so just select 2 watts. MAC address, don't mess with that. Mesh routing, that turns on the mesh. So if you can't see somebody but somebody else can, it'll hop through them. That's what mesh is. We do want that enabled. Radio preferences, just leave that at none. You don't want to mess with that. Channel density, we're going to have more than 11 nodes on this network. So we'll select that. Access point settings. So we want to turn the access point on these radios so the phones can connect to them. So we enable it, and then I call the name of the access point, I call it whatever the radio is. So this radio is node 3, so I'm going to make the access point node 3, which is already done. We're going to make it visible so we can see it broadcasting its name. We'll eventually change that, but we're doing it for ease of use right now, so we want it visible. Or you could have selected network default visible, it doesn't matter. But sometimes that network default will be different, so just select visible. Security, we always want to use WPA2. Here's the password for the hotspot. We'll change that eventually. This is just for ease of use. Leave these 2 things default. Don't mess with those at all. VLAN ID, leave it. VLAN priority, just leave it network default. I don't care what it is. Don't mess with it. VLAN trunking, just leave it. Multicast broadcast limit, leave it. Don't mess with it. There's Ethernet, which is hooked into your computer right now from the radio. Just leave all these default as well. There's some adapters where you can add a second Ethernet. Leave all those the same. We're not hooking these into phones, so this setting doesn't really matter. Just leave that. You don't need to mess with that. DHCP server. The radios can hand out IP addresses to the phones. We do not want to use that. We want that disabled, which it is on this one. You can pick either or. Disable DHCP. We're going to statically set all of our IP addresses on our phones. WaveRelay over IP, that's just something you don't need to worry about. We're never going to use it. DLEP, just disable it. Disable both of those. These radios, some of them have, they all have GPS antennas. So you can select use internal GPS. 1 second. We're not really going to use it, but we might eventually. This just shows your icon on Google Earth. The phones already do that, so we don't really use this stuff. You just disable that. You don't need that. Cursor on target. We don't need that either. Disable it. SA packet generator. Just disable that too. So your most important fields are, your IP address. If that's not set up right. So if it's node 3, 10.0.0.3, 255.0.0.0, make sure your frequencies are all the same and your bandwidth's the same and your max link distance is all the same across all radios. You have to do that. If that is not correct, the radios won't see each other. So we'll save and reconfigure unit. Takes a few seconds. Page will automatically reload. It'll bring up our defaults. Alright, so network configuration is the exact same thing as node configuration, except for it's for the whole network, and that's more advanced management of the network, and I can get into that on a one-on-one with somebody. But the thing you want to mess with is node configuration. That's the first thing. The next very important thing you have to do, or it will not work, is load these radios with a key. Now you don't need an SKL or anything like that. You can do it on this web GUI. So we need to set a key. So we set our crypto mode, which just use this recommended one, that's fine. And then you need to enter a key. What I do is I just randomly generate this key. Okay, it's completed, so we'll return to security configuration. Now I can display the key. Boom, here's my key. So I need to copy and paste this into like a text file so you have it, so you can enter that exact same key right here into all the other radios. If you don't do that, your radios aren't going to communicate. So to check if the radios are talking, I have 2 radios in here right now. We can go to node status, neighborhood, SNR. We don't see anything. So that means my other radio is not communicating with node 3 is not communicating with node 5. So I'm switching out the radios so I can configure node 5. And I already know what the problem is. I changed the key just then. But the same thing could happen if you have different frequencies or bandwidths or things like that. 10.3.254. Look, node 5. I just plugged it in, used the same IP address, same password. Security. Paste my key in here. Set it. Storing the new key. Complete. Go to node status. Check neighborhood SNR. Hey, look at that. I can see node 3. 100 is the best. These are sitting right next to each other. You won't probably ever see more than 95 or something. And they'll communicate all the way down to about 15 or 20. So this just shows me, that I have a signal to noise ratio with the other radio. So that's how you set up these radios. It's very simple. It's very intuitive. I need you to set them all up, and once you do that, we'll hook up the phones to them.